Welcome to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you live stories, locally, top stories, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and Thisday Live begins now. Coming up in the next hour, in what has been acknowledged globally as the freest and fairest election in Nigeria's history, the country celebrates Democracy Day on June 12. President Buhari thanks Nigerians in a broadcast address to mark the day. At least 81 persons have been killed in an attack on a village by suspected Boko Haram militants in northern eastern Nigeria, and race protests and destruction of monuments continue to rock the United States of America and Europe, leading to an emotional U.S. legislative debate, just as states and cities move ahead with sweeping reforms of police departments. The annual commemoration of Democracy Day in Nigeria in the last 2 years has assumed a new significance since the date was moved by the federal government from May 29 to June 12 in honor of the late Chief Kashimawo Lawale MKO Abiola, the acclaimed winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election. Nonetheless, the predominant feeling is that of nostalgia for a cross-section of people who know the story of Chief MKO Abiola, a man whose victory in that election became a defining moment in Nigeria's march to democracy. In a broadcast address to commemorate the occasion, President Buhari thanked all those who fought to entrench and sustain democracy in the country, but acknowledged that this year's celebration amid the COVID-19 pandemic was a difficult one in Nigeria's history. He thanked all those who have been fighting to limit to the barest minimum the devastating impact of COVID-19 on the country. He also spoke extensively about the government's plans to support critical sectors in order to grow the economy and lift millions out of poverty.
On the economic front, our objectives have remained to stabilize the macroeconomy, achieve agricultural and food security, ensure energy sufficiency in power and petroleum products, develop infrastructure, fight corruption, and improve governance. We have witnessed 11 quarters of consecutive GDP growth since exiting recession. The GDP grew from 1.91% in 2018 to 2.27% in 2019, but declined to 1.87% in the first quarter of 2020 as a result of the decline in global economic activities due to COVID-19 pandemic. Every single economy in the world has suffered a decline. Ours has been relatively moderate. In order to stabilize the economy, the Monetary Authority took steps to build the external reserves, which resulted in improved liquidity in the foreign exchange market. The external reserves grew from $33.42 billion United States dollars on April 29, 2020 to about $36 billion United States dollars in May 2020, which is enough to finance 7 months of import commitments. Agriculture remains the key to our economic diversification strategy. The Presidential Fertilizer Initiative Program continues to deliver significant quantities of affordable and high-quality fertilizers to our farmers. This initiative has also revived 31 blending plants and created a significant number of direct and indirect jobs across the value chain. Government is also revamping the cotton, textile, and garment sector via a CBN Textile Revival Intervention Fund that would considerably reduce foreign exchange spent on cotton and other textile imports. Through the Food Security Initiative, we are promoting grow what you eat and eat what you grow. I am also delighted that more and more Nigerians are taking advantage of the opportunities in the agriculture and agri-business sector. I assure you that government will continue to support agriculture through the CBN Anchor Borrowers Program and similar schemes. To protect our farming investments, we have deployed 5,000 agro rangers and employed 30,200.
Joining us now to discuss this and more is Fred Eno, a former head New York Bureau of African Concord magazine and personal assistant to the late Chief MKO Abiola. Fred, thank you very much for joining us on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. You already have listened to President Muhammadu Buhari about what his government has been doing to move our democracy forward. But I would like to ask you, as a man who was a personal assistant to Chief MKO Abiola, what do you think? 27 years later, after June 12, 21 years later, after the return to democracy, what do you think has happened? Do you think that all that struggle has brought us progress and change?
Thank you, Ruben, for having me. I think we've made reasonable progress in terms of consolidating democracy. That, I think, is a given. The fact that we are sitting here today in the year 2020 and having gone through what we went through with several years of brutal military dictatorships, and we're sitting in an era that we don't even think that anyone would dare to stage a military coup in itself is something commendable. However, democracy in itself is not about just having elections and having people elected democratically. It's also got to do with what in our common parlance now people call dividends of democracy. So if we have 20 years of democracy and we've turned that to mean being the poverty capital of the world, if after 20 years of democracy, our country seems to be more divided than ever, if after 20 years of democracy, we still have 13 million children out of school, then I think there's a lot we can do better.
Okay, but can you be specific? What are those things that we need to do better?
First of all, I would want to say we have to do better at selecting our leaders. If there's a big problem in this country today, it's the quality of leadership. Secondly, I think, and this draws from the first point I made of leadership, governance in itself. Because there's no way we can move as a country without leaders who are seen to be responsive to what we consider the real challenges. Whether it is healthcare, whether it is education, whether it is even our own national culture of being our brother's keepers. Because those are the things that will make us less corrupt, more tolerant, and more driven to deliver again to the dividends of democracy. It's not just the question of celebrating a day. So if you're asking me to be specific, I'll give you a myriad areas where we need to do things differently, where we need to do things better than we're doing now. So yes, we can celebrate democracy.
Hello, Fred. I mean, we're talking about democracy beyond Chief Moshood Kashimawo Abiola, and it's also about him. He's a symbol, he's a matter. Now, you were his personal assistant. You were very close to him. What was the vision beyond Nigeria, beyond Africa? What exactly, as someone who was close to him, what did you perceive as his main agenda? Because the narrative has been more about, the election was free and fair, and Chief MKO Abiola was denied his mandate. Can we remind Nigerians what the mandate exactly was, what the vision was?
Moshood Abiola had a vision of Nigeria that was not just vibrant and responsive to its people, but a Nigeria that had a bigger purpose for Africa and indeed the black race. If you situate Moshood Abiola where we are now, with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, and an Africa that has become, as someone called us not too far back, excuse my language, a shithole continent, then you can start seeing why Moshood Abiola really felt that Nigeria needed to work and Nigerians needed to collectively take that responsibility of restoring the dignity of Africa and the black race. And so his vision and his drive to be in the leadership position of Nigeria began from that inner belief that he needed 200 million Nigerians to join him in that task. If it were today, we were 160 million about or thereabout then. But he needed every Nigerian to join him in that task because he knew that if there is a hope for Africa, it had to begin with Nigeria and from Nigeria. And that's why, again, it's not just that bigger picture out there of what Nigeria meant to the world. It was the fact that he was not going to allow a child go hungry in this country. he was not going to allow a child go uneducated in this country because he needed strong, healthy, educated Nigerians to join him in that fight. And so you see a vision and a drive to lead Nigeria, not because he wanted to be president of Nigeria. He carried his Nigerianness everywhere he went to around the globe. So even when we talk about issues of reparations, issues of Africans being respected across the globe wherever they found themselves, he knew that he needed a strong Nigeria to drive that purpose. You know, so he was not seeking power to become the president of Nigeria because Abiola also wanted to be a wannabe former president. No. He felt that he needed a strong Nigeria. And so when in his manifesto he talked about farewell to poverty, he talked about farewell to hunger, he talked about restoring the dignity of the Nigerian worker, he was doing so knowing fully well that it is that kind of a Nigeria that will be in a position to meet what he called Africa's manifest destiny. Because he would not lead a Nigeria that was struggling so much in itself and be able to accomplish what the purpose of Nigeria is to the rest of the continent and the black race.
Thank you very much, Fred Eno, for joining us today on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. We'll now talk more about this same subject with Omoyele Sowore, publisher, Sahara Reporters, and pro-democracy campaigner. Omoyele Sowore, thank you for joining us on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. I'm sure you must have listened to your brother activist, Fred Eno, who was a personal assistant to Chief Moshood Kashimawo Abiola. But it's been 27 years since June 12. It's been 21 years since the return to democracy and the yearning of the Nigerian people for change. Has anything changed in Nigeria? Has democracy brought us progress? So what do you think?
No, I'll be very straightforward by stating clearly that for democracy to bring change, it must meet some basic tenets, and one of which is equality, individual freedom, individual words, majority rule, and minority rights. If you look at those criteria, we haven't met any of those things. People have been poorer than they have ever been, even before the advent of democracy. There is no what you can call majority rule. You have minority rule, and majority of our people are fighting for their rights of survival. And apart from that, you have features that democracy must meet, and one of it is, of course, the rule of law, and that is lacking completely in our system today. And I can testify to it because having fought for democracy as a student activist in my own days at the University of Lagos, I would never think that in 2020, 2019, we will be back to that military era where individual rights are trampled upon, where judges are yanked out of their beds and removed arbitrarily. Elections are no longer hold in which that you can refer to them as credible, free, and fair. If those things are not there, I cannot tell you in good conscience that what we are practicing is even democracy at all.
Well, Sowore, in your own case, because of your issues with the Nigerian government, people have said, you ordinarily dismiss democracy and the present administration because of your issues with the present administration. The president, President Buhari, addressed the country a few days ago on the occasion of June 12. And he had things to say about what his administration has done with security, with the economy, and with other issues that affect all of us as Nigerians. What's your position? Do you think that we're making progress?
No, at the time the president was addressing the nation, 81 persons, Nigerians, were woken up from their sleep in Borno State and massacred by Boko Haram militants or terrorists, as they are known worldwide. In Katsina, and lots of people were killed, and a lot of people, Nigerians, are now IDPs. That is internally displaced persons. So he's saying it at a time that the country is lacking in leadership. It doesn't matter whether I have an issue with them. I've always had issues with governments that don't function in the interest of the public. I've always had it for over 30 years. I've had more issues with governments than anybody in government today can even tell you they have ever done. So there's nothing new. I can't be blackmailed into silence by saying I have issues with the current regime. The regime is not serving the Nigerian people, and I'm always working in the interest of our people. And I will always have issues with government that do not serve the interests of the majority, because I mentioned that these are some of the basic tenets of democracy. And, I was talking about that, for democracy to also be effective, it has features. And one of it is that only the elected people must take decisions on behalf of the people who elected them. In our country today, the people who are taking decisions, who are in charge of our country's decision-making process, are the unelected people at the highest levels. You cannot disprove this. We know it. So, and I've always told you, Doc, the last interview I had with you was one of the evidence the government had against me. I do not mince words, regardless of what it takes. And this is an appeal to the media to stop peppering, over cracks. You guys need, all of us, not you guys, I won't say you guys, all of us in the media space need to start telling the truth. We can't keep deceiving ourselves and keep referring to President Buhari as having said that. But President Buhari only comes out once in a while to speak to the public so that we know and believe that he's still alive, not because he's effectively in charge of Nigeria. Everybody knows that. So why are we lying to ourselves? Why are we deceiving ourselves as if, we are toddlers or kindergarten who need to be told that something that is black is white? We should stop that.
Okay, Sowore, I would like you, because this is a focus on democracy and Nigeria, the destiny of Nigeria. I would like you to comment very briefly on the significance of the MKO Abiola legacy. What does it mean to you? Do you think it's something that we should continue to talk about, or you think it's a jaded subject?
Oh, it's not jaded. I think we haven't even done 1% of what needed to be taught about. It's sad that we no longer teach history, and that is why people who are historically criminals are the ones who are managing our country today. But in terms of MKO Abiola, we fought by his side, we fought for him, and he left us a legacy of sacrifice in this country. And we haven't done anything yet to even recognize this. One of the things we would do when we have our country back is to declare, announce all the results completely and declare him president and pay him what is due to him for the period that he was supposed to be president, 4 years, and remove the legal characters who are referred to as former presidents, who either those ones who took over power forcefully or criminally, or people who were puppets imposed on Nigerian people. People like Chief MKO should never be referred to as the president of Nigeria, should never be paid a pension. People like that should be in jail. Anybody who has ever participated in a coup, especially those who took over power from civilians, should also be tried, no matter how old they are, and sent to prison to pay for their sins, so that nobody in this country would be encouraged to hijack power and use it against Nigerian people ever again. And this is my position. Until this is done, we will not have touched the Abiola subject at all. And we must have a hall of shame for everybody who worked against democracy in this country, and a hall of fame for those who work for democracy, so that the people who are growing up now, especially those who have been around in the last 20 years, the democracy generation, can move from the democracy generation, away from what they call the Indomie generation now to a liberation generation.
Finally, Omoyele Sowore, I'd like to ask you, the president addressed the country on June 12th, and on that day, he addressed the fundamental issues that he had promised that he will address about the economy, the security, and fighting corruption. Do you think that President Buhari, 5 years after he assumed office, do you think he has delivered?
No, completely no. And you can accuse me of bias, but it's the truth. I'm not the only person who feels that way. People in Katsina feels that way. People in Benue, people in Zamfara, people in Lagos, Rivers. There's nobody in this country today who felt or who is feeling any positive impact of this government after 5 years being in government. It has been a government of liability. It has been a government of excuses. It has been hijacked completely by morons, people who ought not to be near the office. People the government itself declared corrupt were incorporated into the government, and they are now principal actors within this government. You know, I wish we had time, Dr. Abati, you know, and we could talk about this. I hate some of these short interviews where we anecdotally talk about fundamental issues that deserves further analysis and, you know, positions that are heavily researched and are verifiable. And that's what I stand for. But I know that you don't have all the time, and I thank you for bringing me on your show.
Well, thank you very much, Omoyele Sowore. You know, Arise News is probably the most generous TV station in Nigeria at the moment in terms of the time that we give our guests. But you made your point, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much for joining us on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. The program will continue. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News channel. Joining me now in the studio, I have Professor BOLA AKINTERINWA, Director General, Bolytag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and YEMI ADAMOLEKUN, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, Prof and YEMI, you've been listening to our special guests on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show, on the major issues of the week. June 12, in Nigeria, the commemoration of that very important date in Nigeria. And then also we touch on other issues about democracy and also about President Buhari's statements about what he has done in the last 5 years. Yemi, I would like to start with you. What's your reaction? What do you think President Buhari has been able to do in the last 5 years with regard to security, the economy, and the fight against corruption in the context of what our special guests talked about? And then also June 12 and MKO Abiola and where we are today in Nigeria and what the future should be.
Interesting. I mean, Yele was quite clear that he doesn't believe that the president has lived up to the promise of quote-unquote change. I mean, I think the point, and I think when people talk about it, it's not that there hasn't been anything done. It's not that we haven't done one road or we haven't done. I mean, it's not that there haven't been individual things done. But on the grand scheme of things, especially at the backdrop of the manifesto, it's that if you set out to do 10 things and we judge you on a scale of 10 and we say you've gotten a 2 maybe or a 3, then you failed. And I think that's what when people who push back against that. And I'll use 2 things that he said in his statement that I think speaks to sort of heart and outlook. The president said in his speech on Democracy Day that no local government is still under Boko Haram territory or Boko Haram control, and that's not true. And part of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, and from at least our family members of the girls in Chibok, that's not the feedback that we hear. And when we also get feedback of military people being ambushed and being killed, I don't think that speaks to local governments that are in control of the Nigerian state. So that's number one. Number 2, one of the things he said in the statement as well that he was planning to do was to say that they're going to have a digital database of a mining cadastre, which is looking to maximize our solid minerals. Mrs. Obiesi Kwesili did that when she was Minister of Solid Minerals. So I don't see why that is a plan to do. If it was done and it was discarded, then acknowledge the work that had been done. And you've been president now for 6 years. So if you, in your administration over 6 years, you haven't gone back to that and you're now stating it's this year as something, some novel idea. For me, it's actually quite disingenuous. So you take that and you take the insecurity issue, which he glosses over in his statement as if there are pockets of it. Meanwhile, people are getting slaughtered in Kaduna. In his own state, Katsina, people are getting slaughtered. And you talk about it as if, oh, it's just a slight glitch, but all in all, we're safe. And we know that's not true. But Democracy Day, as we are today, I think most definitely very significant. But I think, again, to Yele's point, it's a significance that if you are, June 12, 1993 is 27 years ago now. It's a significance that for a generation who don't understand it or haven't been taught it, number one, and number two, don't see democracy in action. So if we take the very basic definition of democracy, democracy is a system of government of the people, by the people, for the people. And if you look around and you can't really see anything that speaks to that for you, it's hard for you to anchor that sacrifice into anything meaningful.
Well, Prof, Fred Eno, who was the first guest, also talked about Abiola's vision. Vision beyond Nigeria, vision in terms of Nigeria's place in the world, in the global space. How could that have been important as an issue for a man who wanted to be president of Nigeria?
In fact, he said it very correctly. He did mention the issue of reparation. If you look at the way reparation was conceived and was to be implemented, when we are now talking about George Floyd, when we are talking about racism, when we are looking at Donald Trump's reaction, I think MKO Abiola already foresaw this long time ago. Reparation is not simply to make those who enslaved the people of Africa, the black people, to pay for what they did wrong, but to raise the level, to conscientize the minds of the colonialists, of the people who brought human indignity to Africa. That in itself, like Fred Eno did point out, is self-explanatory. Meaning now that he's not just talking about providing education for everyone, that there will not be any place for hunger in Africa, in Nigeria, but he was looking at how to translate Nigeria's foreign policy of protecting black dignity in the world. When Nigeria acceded to independence in 1960, Africa was made the cornerstone of Nigeria's foreign policy. In 1976, Professor Adebayo Adedeji reconceptualized it and said Africa should be the centerpiece. Under Olusegun Obasanjo, Obasanjo said, without neglecting Africa, we can look at the whole world also as our centerpiece and then focus on the protection of black people the world over. This is one of the major pillars that was defined by MKO Abiola. So in this case, not having an MKO Abiola assume power, that necessarily denied the whole people of the world, generally, the black people in the world in particular, of this type of foreign policy protection, which is still lacking under the current dispensation. There is no foreign policy protection focus on Nigerians in diaspora.
Okay, Yemi, what we're trying to do is just to deepen the conversation.
Indeed.
In the course of the week, every June 12 ceremony, people talk about, free and fairest election. They talk about, the election was annulled and all of that. But we need to go beyond that. We need to go beyond symbolism. What do you think that Nigeria needs to do to move this democracy forward? What are the urgent issues of the day, in your view?
I'll say two things. I'll say citizens need to be clear about the kind of country that they want. My organization runs a campaign that we call the Office of the Citizen.
What is that organization? Enough is enough.
Runs a campaign that we call Office of the Citizen. And at the heart of it, we say that citizens have the power and they have the highest office, not the office of the president or the office of the governor. And the simple reason is the fact that we vote people into office. So a democracy allows you to exercise that power, and we don't do it enough. We don't hold our elected officials accountable. Mr. Eno was talking about the quality of leadership. The quality of leadership is a reflection of society. So if we don't pay attention to it and we don't get involved in the process, then we get what we get. But that's also parallel with an electoral system that works, and also fixing that. Now, people talk about, electronic voting, not forgetting that it's part of a process. If we can even just get election day card reader and electronic collation of results in real time, if we commit to just do two things, forget about voting electronically, let's still be voting on paper. And let all of us vote on one day. We shut down the whole economy to vote. We can vote one day. If we're going to shut down the whole economy, let's shut it down for one day. And people sleep there and vote. And if we're transmitting results electronically, then in real time, we're able to see who won and who didn't win. That gives our elected officials political legitimacy. And that also gives citizens ownership of the process and the people they put in power. And one of the things we did during the week was launched a website, not launched, but added a feature to a website where if you put in your PU number, it returns everybody that represents you. And the feedback has been amazing. People are like, oh, I didn't know. Oh, I didn't know. So if we don't hold them accountable or don't know that we can actually call them and ask them questions, then we get the short end of the stick. So I think those two things for me will be quite important.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. There is a lot that civil society can do to move Nigeria forward at the level of the people taking ownership of the process. But let's take another subject, also related to the statement made by President Buhari, and also related to issues that the president we didn't have, Chief MKO Abiola, talked about extensively. Earlier in the week, no fewer than 81 persons were killed after suspected Boko Haram insurgents attacked communities in Gubiu, local government area of Borno State, in the northeastern part of Nigeria. Arise News has received images of the aftermath, which we must warn that may be disturbing. Residents of the attacked communities are mostly herders who were said to have resisted Boko Haram hostilities for years. However, dozens of insurgents were said to have invaded the community on Tuesday evening on motorcycles and gun trucks, executing villagers and taking others hostage. The state governor, who Professor Babagana Zulum visited the communities in the aftermath of the attack, said the only solution to the massacre was to dislodge insurgents on the shores of Lake Chad. Meanwhile, the Chief of Army Staff, General Tukur Buratai, who has been in the Northeast for the last 2 months, says that over 1,400 terrorists have been neutralized and 1,000 Boko Haram informants have been arrested in recent weeks. Yeah, well, serious situation right there in the northeastern part of the country. But it's not only the Northeast. There's also security challenge in the Northwest and also in the North Central part of Nigeria. There have been reports of attacks on villages in the Northwest and also in southern Kaduna. And the concern out there is that, look, the Nigerian government has not been able to address this. We have Boko Haram, COVID-19 challenge. But at the same time, insecurity remains a major challenge. But President Buhari, in his speech on June 12, made it clear that, yes, the government is aware of this, and the government will continue to deal with the problem. But is the government doing the right thing? Is the government alive and awake? Is the government pursuing the matter the way Nigerians suspect? I think at this point we should take just a short break. When we return, Prof. Well, okay, maybe Prof, I see you want to say something. Maybe you should say something before we take the short commercial break.
I don't know whether it is better to dream during daytime or to dream during night time. I think in both cases, the President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, is not dreaming during daytime and is not dreaming at the night time. He appears not actually to have the correct information, knowledge about what is actually happening. Because now, this killing that we are talking about, 81 people, information has it that the community had been attacked on the alleged belief that they were informants. They were reporting the attackers to the federal government. So it was more or less of a retaliation. Now, coming back, the report also has it that the attackers not only came on bicycles, motorcycles, but also armored cars. Now, I asked myself, in Nigeria, how will attackers come with armored car? Armored car is not a Volkswagen vehicle. It's not Hyundai. It's not just ordinary car. They came with that, and yet there's the impossibility for government, for the soldiers, to get them attacked. Jonathan, you know, good luck, Jonathan.
No, President Jonathan, please be respectful. Don't say Jonathan.
Please, you see, when an individual has an international exposure and is well known, you don't put any title. When a medical doctor, MBBS, is there, and they grow, they get to the certain level, they become Mr. Akingba, Mr. Akila.
Okay, please carry on, Prof.
So, good luck, Jonathan, Olusegun Obasanjo. All these people, you don't need any title for them. We don't need any chief.
Okay, sir.
Because they are global citizens.
Oh, it's fine. Just make your point.
Now, good luck, Jonathan made it clear that in his government by that time, there were Boko Haramis, you know, in the office. Now, I think that we need to address this question. Are the Boko Haramis still in the presidency, still in the public service? Because whenever President Buhari says we have killed, we have arrested, we have contained the activities of Boko Haram, 24 hours, 48 hours thereafter, they are responding to say, you must be a joker, you must be a dreamer, that we are still alive, you have not done anything to us. Meaning now that Mr. President himself is not telling Nigerians the truth. And that's why I started with this idea of, is Mr. President dreaming? Is he dreaming in the afternoon or at midnight? And more importantly, the issue of our politicians, for instance, they always confuse the word terrorism with banditry. They try to say what we are witnessing is banditry. Whereas Dr. Onaikomu clearly made this point just about 2-3 days ago, saying, look, the way we have banditry in Nigeria is synonymous. It reflects, it exemplifies terrorism par excellence. So why are you now hiding under banditry when we are faced with, you know, heavy terrorism? So this is the issue.
Okay, yeah, I get your point, Prof, but I'm very sure that the president is alive and awake. But it's not for me to say so. I'm sure my brothers, Femi Adesina and Garuba Shehu, they would have the opportunity to respond to you. But YEMI, hold your fire. I know you will say enough is enough on the issue of security.
Of the sleeping president?
No, not on the issue of sleeping president, on the issue of security, and that we need to get security right. But let's take the next subject. Coronavirus global deaths have exceeded 430,000, according to the Johns Hopkins University. And we now have over 7.7 million confirmed cases of the coronavirus around the world. The United States has the most recorded deaths, over 115,000. Brazil has over 42,000, and the United Kingdom has over 41,000, where the United States also remains the most infected country with over 2 million confirmed cases. Brazil follows with over 850,000, and Russia has over 519,000 cases. Here in Nigeria, there has been an increase of 501 confirmed cases of COVID-19. The latest results from the National Center for Disease Control says that in total, there has been 15,682 cases of COVID-19 confirmed in the country. 51,101 of those cases not 51,000, 5,101 of those cases have been discharged, and 407 have died. Where does the situation in Nigeria at the moment? But Yemi, maybe you would like to address some of the issues. We've been told that on June 21, the airlines, domestic flights will resume. And we have also been told that there is now a protocol in place for churches and mosques. And yesterday, there was a lot of attention with regard to that. And generally, we seem to get the impression that government is saying that, look, individuals have to take responsibility and the country has to move forward. Do you have some other things to say to government at the federal level and at the state level, and to the people themselves?
I think starting point for me would be one, to again reiterate that the Presidential Task Force is constituted, let me use that word. It's full of government officials. It's a body.
No, we dealt with that before. Now we are moving forward. What's the way forward?
No, that's the point. The way forward is that hasn't been addressed. So when you don't address situations like that for a body that's making policy and decisions for a disease that then it's a challenge. It's missing private sector, it's missing civil society, the composition in terms of women and persons with disabilities are non-existent. So the fact that hasn't been addressed for me also speaks to the government's ability to actually deal with this as an ongoing concern. That's number one. Number two, you have subnationals who are literally putting their citizens at risk by not testing enough and sort of saying that we don't have, but they're not testing enough. One of the things that we found over the weekend is just looking at Google search trends of what people are searching for online. So people are searching for, what does it mean if I have loss of taste and smell? Doctors are saying they have seen patients present with loss of taste and smell in places like Calabar, in places in states like Anambra as well. So when that is also not being mapped, the data that Nigerians in itself are providing in the way that they're searching for information that tells you what people are going through, that says something. And then thirdly, you're right. If the world is saying that this is a virus that we're going to have to deal with, then government needs to be very clear in articulating that and saying what that means. How, if you get it, how it affects you will be different from how it affects me. That's also part of why that personal responsibility is in place. So if I know I have underlying issues, it behoves me to protect myself from certain places because it can compromise my health. And I think communication, as we've said, continues to be a challenge with the government, and that's again back to my PTF conversation. If PTF was composed with people that can provide that expertise, Nigerians in a sense, and those stakeholder groups, if I want to use that word,
well, yeah, I mean, you cannot be more correct. And on that note, I move to the next story. Protests over the death of George Floyd, an African-American, and an unnamed African-American in Minneapolis, has quickly given rise to a vast number of Americans reckoning with racism as the backlash against entrenched inequalities continues to echo across the United States of America and in Europe for the third straight week. Protesters against racism and police violence have defied the authorities across the United States and in Europe as they extend their anger to what they perceive to be symbols of slavery and racism by pulling down historical monuments and statues. In Richmond, Virginia, protesters ripped down a statue of the explorer and colonizer Christopher Columbus overnight and threw it into a lake. In Boston, a similar statue was beheaded. At least 10 monuments of controversial historical figures have been removed in the United States of America. In Belgium, King Leopold II's statues were defaced over his enslavement and human rights abuses in the Congo after it was carved up during the Berlin Conference of 1885, I think. And that granted the country to him as a personal colony, Prof. Yeah, I would like you to comment on this, the erasure of history, the attack on monuments and statues across Europe within the context of the protests against racial inequality and injustice. Quickly.
We look at it from two perspectives. The destruction of monuments, toppling monuments, can be understood from these two perspectives that look. You cannot destroy an idea. An idea is indestructible. The statue and the monument is simply an expression of an idea to let people know that, okay, this was what happened at a point in time. So in this case, I think that at the end of the day, while it is right to destroy what constitutes a source, of anger, of oppression, we must also remember that it is equally good to still have an instrument to recall, to remember what had transpired in the past.
Yeah, Prof, you are absolutely correct. YEMI, how should I put it? You cannot be more correct. Thank you very much. And on that note, you've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.